Hello and welcome to Web3 with A16Z, a show about building the next generation of the internet. Our featured guest today is serial entrepreneur Ben Rubin, who previously built the viral live streaming app Meerkat and then the group video chat app Houseparty, acquired by Epic Games in 2019, and who is now CEO and co-founder of Here Not There Labs, which is building a decentralized messaging protocol. Rubin spoke with Jason Rosenthal, head of A16Z Crypto's CSX Startup Accelerator program, about paths to product market fit, given his journey in building breakout apps. They also discuss his unique perspective on creating company culture and more. This conversation first took place at our recent CSX program, which just concluded in London. As a reminder, none of the following should be taken as investment, business, legal, or tax advice. Please see a16z.com/disclosures for more important information, including a link to a list of our investments.
Thank you. Thank you. And so maybe we can just give us the thumbnail of your journey so far. Talk about some of the things that you've done.
I studied architecture at school, buildings architecture. I left at my third year. I had actually a great time in architecture. I really enjoyed it. But at some point, I realized that building digital spaces might be more exciting. So I left school to be, I guess, an architect of digital spaces. I've been doing that for 12 years now, maybe 13 years. And right off that third year, I started a company called Life on Air, and we build mainly live streaming product. Most of them failed, and then one got a breakthrough called Meerkat. Then after that, another one that had a breakthrough called Houseparty, which was a group video chat. And then, funny or not, Houseparty was supposed to also introduce Houseparty for remote work right in pandemic, but that didn't happen because we sold the company before.
You sold to Epic Games,
To Epic Games, yeah. The two board members that supported that decision are no longer with their with their VCs. And we were talking Sequoia and Greylock. After that, I started working on Here Not There, which is making a protocol called River, which is for decentralized communication, and a client called Towns.
Amazing. Yeah. And so, one of the things that I think is most, a three-time serial entrepreneur in communications products, two so far achieved their breakout moments at a time when the space was super crowded. One of the things that you and I have talked a lot about is with Houseparty in particular. I thought you had a very, almost poetic way of thinking about how you wanted people to talk about the product, and then at the dinner table, and then that in turn influenced a bunch of features that you guys built that made it break out. Maybe talk about that a little bit. Maybe just even start for those who don't know, what was Houseparty? What did it do?
Houseparty is, at the time where we started, 2016, was basically the easiest way to open your phone and start talking to your friends. You would need to call them. Right now there is an Apple API that allow you to update notifications with content, but back then we kind of hacked together a way to remove the payload and update it, and we were able to say, oh, Ben and Jason are talking in the house. But Houseparty is a very light group chat experience that one of the core principles of it was how fast can you talk to somebody that is meaningful in your life, and what kind of meaningful conversations we don't have just because, I guess, there's a lot of baggage calling someone. Sometimes you want to just call somebody, but it's would be too weird to call them. But sometimes when you change the medium and you reframe the experience in something that gives plausible deniability for both parties, then you can actually create some sort of a market, because everything is a market. There is, in a Houseparty, there is the people who are willing to talk and the people who are willing to receive and talk to those people. So how can you reframe the market in a way that creates more liquidity? And I know it sounds very logical, but it's actually how we interact with a lot of things in our life. Taking it back to at least my philosophy for finding product market fit, but it really depends what you're doing and kind of Actually, my opinion is that it's for anything, but you should take it however. It's that it is important to think about the conversation, the dinner conversation, in which someone is explaining what happened to them today to their friends through your product. Like, what is the thing that as they put their like knife and fork down and they find that 3 seconds silence that they can say something, and they decide to share the experience that they had earlier today, and that experience was with your product. What do they say? Why would they do that? And once only you founders, nobody else, once you feel that it's true, like that vision you have in your head of what would happen, then you kind of want to map the funnel all the way to that moment. Let's say, today I had in Houseparty, today I talked to like 3 friends that I haven't talked in a while. And this is something somebody shared, and we had a great experience. I would never talk to this dude from high school. You remember him? And then this guy showed up, and it was amazing. Like, how would he get to that point? And then you start building the funnel of your product, or like what must have been true for them to get to that moment of time. And then you put the stuff that you already have, the stuff that you don't have. Then you ask yourself, well, how would we get them there? Then you start plotting the funnel. And then the work starts, which is the creative work of how do you shorten that funnel. And it also requires for you to make opinionated risks and bets about what would be defaults that will, somebody would be okay to move without selecting, without like thinking too much. And we're not talking about spamming invites and shit like that. Like, we've never done it in our products. Like, everything was opt-in, but there are ways in which people can feel like they can just cruise through your funnel all the way to that aha moment.
Cool. Yeah, and one of the things I love about that story, right, is you can when you're building your company, you can kind of imagine like it's pretty easy to think about a conversation you'd want someone to have at the dinner table about how amazing your product is, and then it's a little harder, but not too hard, to think about like how you might map that funnel to like get to that point. But then it's actually really hard to build the features that you imagine in your funnel in a way that they actually work. And talk about, I remember you guys had some metric about like the amount of time or number of clicks that it would take to like be in a conversation that turned out to be pretty transformative.
Yeah, so I have an obsession with minimum amount of click to aha moment. And when one of the things that frustrates designers that work with me is that I cannot look at any artboard by itself. It always needs to be within the whole storyboard. And the reason is because you have to ask yourself, what is the entry point and the exit point? And it can't be the one before and the one after. It's like, no. Let's look at all of the steps. Because like, it could be exhausting to a user. I mean, we're all users of products that we don't build, and we don't have time for that. We don't have time for any kind of friction. So I always ask the question of like, how can a user get to this state without the previous screen? Like, is there a way for them to get there without the previous screen? And sometimes it's really provocative, but usually we find a way. And you might get to a place where you have 3 screens, and the median to have a conversation with the median time to have a conversation with 3 people that is less than 1 minute and 43 seconds, which is pretty damn good if you just download an app and all of a sudden you have a group conversation with 3 people that's kind of cool, and you haven't had the call. So that's, I think, kind of where we were. That was the median. So I bet some people had like some crazy stories.
And I mean, if I remember right, when you got to that point, you could when you sort of progressively whittled away the friction, the time, the number of clicks, you could materially see engagement in the app go up.
Absolutely. Because the thing is, like, you start from what would make somebody talk about your product in the dinner table, and if you get them fast to that, unless you're like really, you have a very unique character that is not, most people don't feel the same, then. But if you truly believe that this is something exciting that somebody would share. Like, yeah, you bring people fast to this, they will talk about it for sure. And that's how more people do it and more people do it. And that's how you get to the network effects that you would want.
Awesome. Yeah. So let's go backwards as a way to move forward and talk for a minute about Meerkat. How many people used or remember or like know what Meerkat was? All right, so for those of you who don't, I mean, so Meerkat was really the first live streaming video product. And what was that? That was 2000.
There was a bunch of live streaming video product. The first one that I guess made it consumer.
The consumer and broke through. And so talk about the journey there, because that was a high drama.
Well, it started with, it would be cool if I clicked about it. Because I was like really obsessed with, this is still the guiding force in my life, which is like how to bring people together in the most human way possible when they're physically apart. I know it's a mouthful, but I really think that building spaces that create experiences that otherwise you couldn't feel is, I have made peace with the fact that I can't bring kids to the world because I'm not a woman. But if I can create spaces for people to have feeling, I mean, for me, it's close enough, It's really close enough to creation that could be, because you're making other people feel. And I think maybe jazz musicians or any musicians, I guess, feel the same, or comedians. So it started with, it would be cool if I can press a button and immediately have all of my audience watch, what I streaming. And we're like, well, how would we do it? And where all the other products have failed is they didn't have this like, okay, how do we remove the screen? And the only way to remove the screen was using a Twitter API that immediately onboarded all like the graph and immediately posted it on Twitter. And anyone who wanted to watch it on Twitter would one click become a watcher. So that means that like if you have 30,000 people following you on Twitter, you would download Meerkat and you would go live, and then it's right on your feed and anyone who watches, and all of a sudden you see all of those people joining, which is the positive reinforcement that you want. But then it's like, okay, like how many steps to go live? And I asked for 1 click to go live. It was 2 and then 1. So for the first time you need to Twitter, but then after this, it's 1 click to go live, which was also cool. And it also speaks to the fact of how simple things done well, where all of the complexity is actually abstracted from the user in a way that thinks about what would be cool, what would be a great experience, and make opinionated decisions about default, because the devil is in the details, but God is in the defaults. And it's important thing to remember, like defaults are so important. It's not A or B. It's like, we're doing A. You can go to B, but like we're doing A. Like defaults are important. Yeah.
So, sounds amazing. Why aren't we all using Meerkat today? Did something happen with Twitter?
Oh yeah. So so it's funny. I think the Meerkat story has a lot of layers to it for me personally as well, because I think coming at the time I was an immigrant from Israel. And that comes also with a lot of kind of like dynamics in which you don't know exactly what kind of agency you have and what kind of strength you have or don't have. But at the end of the day, we were using the API the way it's intended to be. We're not abusing anything. But they bought a company 3 months before we even launched, and they were really afraid of Meerkat because everybody was using it. Jimmy Kimmel, I don't know, like Ashton Kutcher, Seth Rogen, all of these, Madonna, and they just decided to pull the graph without even releasing the other product just yet. Yeah, and then we told ourselves lies for like 3 months, which is okay. Usually people tell themselves lies, like us founders, like, oh, it's going to be okay, and we're going to figure it out. But in 3 months, we kind of like, okay, decided that we're going to do a pivot, and we're going to focus on a different type of dynamic of user interaction that is more smaller group, and instead of broadcast, well, what we said, instead of theater, it should feel like a house party, because we were talking about feeling, and then it stuck. House party, because we talked about what is the feeling of what we want to build, and we said house party. So, and then we're like, we should call it house party.
But I mean, Twitter taking away your access to the graph. I mean, that
No,
basically
that completely threw the whole thing. I think at the end, before we closed it, well, this is going to sound mean, but it's not. It's the core users that were, I think, L21 on 30, which means like they use the app 21 unique days out of 30 days, which is a metric. Where actually, and this is a live streaming product, people with that are their site is challenged, because Meerkat was built with a lot of accessibility features. So they were able to like hear who is joining, like it will read to them that people join. And I thought it was poetic that the group that was staying using the product was actually the one of live streaming product, was actually one that has eyesight challenge. But yeah, it killed the product.
And so I'm wondering, like, how much did that? So now we'll talk about Towns and what you're, or Here Not There, and what you're building with River and Towns. But I'm curious, how much, if at all, did the experience of, having a great idea, building it, launching it, see it take off like a rocket, and then having the rug pulled out from under you, like how much did that influence your curiosity around open networks and crypto and the like?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think that there is a form of sin that we all do as founders, as creators, where we want it to be about ourselves in the beginning, because we have something to prove. That's the only reason, you would take a risk like this and not go and do something else. And I think over time, as you do it over and over, part of the beauties that are coming out of being in this profession is that you realize that people are actually paying you for your insight, for your point of view that is in disagreement with the market. If you're going to do what everybody else is doing, there's no reason to back you. We're just all going to sit here and do 8% year over year. But it's because you have some sort of emotional imbalance that can only be fulfilled through the insight that you carry. And the insight that you carry about the market, about what you want to see, is the asymmetrical return that your backers and the people who are actually listening to your company are betting on. And over time, you kind of learn that the beauty of it is that it comes from within. It's not the destination of, I want to be there, or this is what has to happen. These are the features that have to happen, or these are the investors that we have to have, or this is the type of write-up I want somebody to write about me. Like, it really is about having fun, doing something that you feel is meaningful, and be very clear about how you're going to make money. And I know it's not a popular take because people are talking about changing the world, but like, you are the atomic unit of that, the chain event of your influence in the market. And if you're not taking care of yourself and your happiness, and you are constantly understanding if you're feeling that you're doing something that you're proud of, that you can actually be rewarded and your team can be rewarded, that atomic unit will now become a molecule, and it will now become a thing. Like, it will just be you chasing after things, and that's a lot of bad habits to unwind after, at this journey. So the way I think about going back and building is actually, it's not a decision, it's a way of life. Mm-hmm.
It's almost like you're compelled to, like you're compelled to do
and it's a set of other actions that I put in my being, because I think of myself as this is also going to sound weird, but like, I think of myself as a planter, not as a flower. And I think about like the soil and the water and how the sun comes, and are there any toxins? I ask myself every Sunday, what are the things that what is the things that bring me anxieties, about work? And actually, my to-do list is entirely a derivative of the anxiety list of Sunday. So anything that happened the week before, just like out of the window. I don't care what are the things that keeping me like anxious right now, and let's write it down and let's see what. And my entire week is actually focused on bringing me back to somatic balance. Because when I'm in a somatic balance, then the team is in somatic balance, and if the team is in somatic balance, then we can start making music,
Interesting. We've never talked about that before, but I literally have exactly the same process. Every Sunday, I write down the list of things that are stressing me out, and then in a separate column, what am I going to do about it? And then spend the week trying to whittle that list down.
By the way, once you do that, you stop going to the fridge, at least for me, many times. You got a lot of trips to the fridge.
Well, cool. So, let's talk about what are you building with Here Not There? Like, what is the thing that you found that compelled you to build again?
So the idea is to build a network that is owned and operated. Think about it like the back end of WhatsApp, but it's owned and operated by the groups that are using it. And the biggest, I guess, gap that we are focused on is that if you want to, people who create online communities, moderate online communities, or kind of moderate, their job is thankless and exhausting and not rewarding. And I think this is not a company about moderation tools for mods, but it goes to say that the whole potential of online communities, or in a better way, the potential of people coming together on the internet around a goal and able to execute on it in a meaningful way is capped by the misincentive alignment that as that group grows, there is more and more work that is not getting paid on the people that foster that. And the idea is, what if we give sovereignty of the atomic unities, the group chat, meaning who can read, who can write, what are the rules of engagement, and by that, it's essentially you identify ownership of it, and then also allow them to solicit contributions in a way that is front and center. So now, people have apps. People don't download the app as much as they used to, by the way, which is kind of interesting to think about, because everything exists in a balance. So you have to ask yourself, like, you know what the thing that is most exciting about AI is that, like, everything exists in a balance, and derivatives out. Every derivative asset is just contributing to the core, like, main asset that is a derivative from. So the most exciting thing about AI is that the more these crazy like alternative realities that are going to happen, the more like sitting and having coffee with your friend is going to be more valuable. So I'm like excited about this stuff, because everything exists in a balance. So if you think about it, apps are in decline. Like there is a big centralization moment toward the big apps, and there's really not the same kind of, and I have this view that like we actually want those communities to behave almost like an app store, or like, it should be like if we're paying for an app, we should be paying for a value that we get of being part of certain communities. And they should have the accountability of like, what are people, how people are reviewing, like what is the cadence of the update? What are the new features that the community is doing? And I actually think that there should be like, any kind of geekery that you have. I'm like big on another weird thing. I'm not big on aurora lights, like the northern lights. And I'm part of communities like this. I'm also part of a community that is specifically, Tokyo disco glow from the 80s. And all we do is trade like vinyls there, which is where I met a lot of friends in Tokyo. And usually what happened is that people could go and, they put their heart there and they share stuff. And then lo and behold, like 1,000 members later, somebody is like trying to sell some stuff that are like out of context. And you're like, Anyways, so what we're trying to do is to create the entire substrate that is needed in order for communities to own their group chat, to be able to solicit and reward contribution, and make it so in a way that is sustainable so the protocol can also continue and do the job of moving around the end-to-end encrypted messages that is the work and getting paid for it.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things that I think is so cool about what you're building is I think I've never drawn this chart, but I bet it wouldn't be that difficult. If you look at the history of the internet, going back to bulletin boards and then Usenet and then more modern group things like WhatsApp and Twitter at some level, I think the general arc of communities on the internet is in the early days, some of the most amazing connections and conversations happen there. And then as the group grows, as you were saying, both the quality of conversation goes down and the work required.
Yeah, value is being created, but it stays with a third party. Like with the Discord, with the group, with the Facebook group, it doesn't go to the people that actually create it.
And you guys actually have the opportunity to reverse the polarity of that.
Absolutely, and I think it's time for the internet to be as accessible, but it needs to stop being free in the sense of let's tax you for your internet, but more like you should be rewarded for the work that you're putting on the internet. Like we should stop accepting the fact that things need to be free,
I mean, so like group owners will be able to, if they want, they could sell their group for real
Absolutely.
value.
Yeah, and members can sell their membership if they don't want, which is the best form of
moderation.
I guess, rating, like.
Amazing. So, I mean, as you guys can hear, I think one of the interesting things about Ben is that he's got a very unique way of looking at the world, and I think that perspective flows through into how you build products. So, talk about. I think that the same is true of how you've thought about creating the culture in the workplace. So maybe talk about. I mean, the three things that always stand out to me are an offsite in Japan, an ask of your team to push hard. Like basically defer joy and vacation as a way to hit a key company milestone, and then your own piano playing experience. Three distinct things, but I think all make the same point.
First, everything exists in a balance.
There you go.
So that's the first rule. So we're fully remote, and one of the ways to balance remote is first, if you're going to do fully remote and you're in the stage that I assume people here it's like 0 to 1 stage. Yeah, 0 to 1 stage. It's really hard. One of the ways that you can mitigate it is hire only seniors. If you're trying to do 0 to 1 with it's maybe a hot take, but like it's really hard to get junior level team members to have. This is not about juniors being bad. This is about what you need to do in order and your commitment to a junior person that you hire to actually help them grow and become the best version of themselves. This is actually committed to anyone on your team. And if you're hiring somebody who's junior and they're not there, like they're not going to be able to get what basically you promised them when they took the thing. And I think that creates, over time, I've never seen it succeed. So that's one way to offset the balance, and it should be coupled with like, so what do we do to create vulnerability? Because if you're doing 0 to 1 stuff, you really don't want to be like, that's the idea, that's the feature, let's go. Like you actually want to be able to create a culture when you speak about the motivation and how success should look like and feel like, but you want to draw together and you want to be able to say when you feel something is not going to work. And that kind of vulnerability actually doesn't translate remote. Like nobody likes to tell somebody that like, actually, I don't know if it's going to work, or like, people are being more editorial. And when you spend time together and learn the body cues and the human-to-human interaction, it becomes less anxiety-inducing to actually engage in a conversation that could be uncomfortable. And for us, what we did is that twice a year, we choose a location, we fly to it, and we spend like a whole week together, just us. And it's been incredible to create that kind of like emotional elasticity that vulnerability requires. Because in the vulnerability, this is where you actually get innovation. The other thing, also, yes, sometimes it's crunch time and you say, hey, there's going to be moratorium, but also like everything exists in a balance. For example, members of the team, the moment they reach that milestone, they all get a 1-year bonus. So you always want something that they can go to. They go to the spouse and say, "Hey, this half year is going to be intense. We're working toward once, but in the end, we're getting this cash bonus that is pretty meaningful."
And that was like a new thing. I mean, so just to fully unpack that, right? You gave everybody an extra full year of.
Well, they're going to get it once.
They're okay. So you haven't hit the milestone yet, but basically
Yeah.
you said like this is essential to the company.
Yeah.
We need you to do whatever it takes to get us there. But we're gonna give you this once we
Yeah.
hit it. And how has that worked so far?
It's working great. We're hitting our targets. Things are being shipped on time. I think that it was as we were doing this, like it was interesting to see that maybe breaking it to smaller milestone and like introducing some of the bonuses before is also helpful. But I think like it's important to state what you want. It's important to be able to say, this is what we want to achieve and get to agreement with the team. And then honor the fact that means that you're taking something from them that you didn't initially agree to. So that means that you need to replenish the misalignment that you did and build that trust that you're actually going to follow through, and they are going to get the car that they thought they're going to get 2 years from now, or being able to pay for renovation or whatever it is that it's important to them. And it's also important that your team recognizes you as a leader that takes care of them, and as a leader that when they spend time with you, they're likely to make more money than if they were spending time somewhere else.
So, I mean, we talked about this before. So, life is a three-legged stool, right? So, get the team together in Japan, reward them when they're working hard. What do you do to feed your own curiosity and artistic?
So yeah,
side
so
of things?
everything needs to be fun, meaningful, and rewarding. Like everything. Every single thing needs to be fun, meaningful, and rewarding. Otherwise, it doesn't worth it. As I'm thinking about my role as an enzyme, some call it CEO, an enzyme of the ecosystem, I think about what are the things that make my time fun, meaningful, and rewarding. And for me, music, piano playing, and hosting people at my place, I make sure that they happen, and I make sure that they happen on a weekly basis. For example, I take piano lessons for 2 years. I take them 3 times a week. A guy come to my home 3 times a week, and we play piano. And it's 9 to 10. Some people would have meetings, but no, I'm playing piano, and I think it's important because it gives me a lot of solitude. It also honors the kind of intention that I want everybody in the team to have, which is that you need to take care of yourself. Like there is a reason in the airplane they give you first give the oxygen to yourself and then to the kid, because it's like if you're not feeling like if you're suffocated, like that shit is contagious, and everybody needs to have fun, feel like they're working on something they're proud of, and have a clear understanding how it's going to be rewarding. Yeah. So maybe we're all planters, huh? Yeah.
Last question, then we'll open it up to you all for questions. So, a lot of CEOs and founders spend a lot of time thinking about, worrying about, planning for the future. How do you approach that?
I don't think about the future at all. I spend most of my time thinking about and spending time with my intuition and spending time with what I wish I had now, what I wanted to feel now, not in the future. And I think that thinking about the future is a fool's errand, because if you're thinking, there's so many, like, how would you even know? I mean, like,
The future's uncertain.
and it's not about like, I make decisions fast, and I move very strong with my intuition, and I have a lot of convictions, but like, I don't even, future, not for me. I'm like, there's so many things that you can't control, but what you can control is really trying to build a better relationship with your intuition and your somatic feelings about what would you want to see now and what feel exciting and meaningful to you. Because once you are able to articulate that, it's not like you're going to do this and it's going to happen. So as you're leaning into it, we talked about insight and why it's important, to do that. It's like once you're leaning into it, it's going to take time. And if you have good intuition and you have a good insight and you really delved into what would you want, you're likely to do something that you believe is meaningful. You're likely to have fun. And guess what? 2 years from now, if it's alive and people like it, you kind of build the future. But, it doesn't work future backwards. It starts from the origin, which is only you. You can't be something else. You can't be a version of yourself in the future. You can't change who you are. You can only work with yourself better.
Incredible. All right. Thank you. As you guys can see, Ben is a very thoughtful, open, and vulnerable person. So I would encourage you to go deep if you have questions.
I want here.
What's up, Ben?
Hey.
How do y'all think about go-to-market? Do you go after crypto native users and communities, or are you all focused on more Web 2 communities?
So I'm thinking about what would be cool. Really, I think about what would be cool. I think about who is the target audience that we're talking to. The target audience is not the community members; is actually the moderators, the admin, the people that created. And then in that, I ask myself, what would be cool for them? And I think the ability to own their spaces, to own a permissionless protocol that lives forever, the ability for them to solicit contributions in a way that is transparent, the online graph that they get of their users and their reputation, and the fact that it's end-to-end encrypted. Now, you wrap all of this with, I guess, the promise of what does it mean that if you're successful here, you're part owner of the protocol, and how that actually rewards you. We're going to speak to a part of this target customer that nobody spoke to. It's like your work, which is thankless, exhausting, and not rewarding, is now being acknowledged. It's going to be there on chain that you are the person who's doing the work, that these are the contributions that are coming, right? And this is something that I think was not spoken to. It's a part that was not spoken to. And we're definitely going to lean into this really, really hard. And besides that, there is also the ideas of what our network effect look like, especially in the crypto community. So the way we're thinking about it is that we're going to make sure that there is a large group of communities that are moving over at once, because this is what we think is going to be cool, and I think we're going to do it because we're going to go one by one, and I think we will be able to convince maybe half of the people that we talk to. The other half is already going to be warm and going to be, and we have the tools to convince them, because we can, in a programmable, immutable way, show them how they can be part owner of the network that they are going to take risk on. So this is how we're thinking about go-to-market. Like really about target user and how to make it cool for them and how to appeal to a piece of their identity that was not really spoken to.
Hey, what's going on? I had a question around essentially communicating to users. I think like consumer tech is one part technology and how you build a product, but largely how do you convey to that user base? And crypto is very unique, right? The ownership word confuses a lot of people, I think. So I'm just curious.
The crypto users? Well,
no, non-crypto users, when you talk to someone about owning things on the internet. So I'm just curious, like exercises or ways that you think about.
Who is your target audience?
For us, we build creative tools powered by artist-trained AI models. So our core customer is essentially building for artists, IP holders on the internet and helping them own their AI likeness. And so my question is centered around effectively like the ways that you go about building language and communication.
Artists own what they make, right? So maybe you want to talk about what they don't make, which is money.
Yeah.
No, for real.
No, that's at the center of what we do.
I would just focus on that.
Yeah.
Because that's what you would That's what you want, because like ownership is like you don't. I think there is. I've noticed it more in the last cycle when we just kind of like started. It's like this is like I'm not saying it's you, or I'm just saying there is like some founders that are like dogmatic about decentralization and ownership. Like if you're building consumer stuff, like who the fuck cares? We just want, to talk about a stool without having West Elm like fucking ads running after us for a week, right? We want to be able to put something on the internet that if it creates value, then we get rewarded for this value, right? We care about mostly our safety and finding somebody to mate with. Like these are the two things. So like if you go from that, you're squinting. You don't think it's right?
No, I'm just listening.
No. It's really those two things. So when you talk about the artists, like their safety is their ability to make money, right? And I think that's kind of like how you want to. You don't want to walk back from the crypto ideals into this, because that's going to be you trying to prove that your thesis is right. What you want to do is just think about the motivation that got you to do what you're doing now and why it's important to you and why you think it's cool and meaningful. And then from that, you focus on the target audience that you think is going to be most, relevant to this. And ask, what is exciting here? What would they say in a dinner table with other artists? They're definitely not going to sit there and talk about ownership, right? They're going to say, like, today I got paid. That's what they're going to say. And now what happened? What happened that they shared with everybody that they got paid? And you might arrive to different funnels or conclusion of how to get them to that sentence that is different than what would you otherwise arrive if you walked crypto back.
Thank you.
Hey, so there was one thing that really resonated with me, and that was holding responsibility for the people you hire.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Since we're also in this stage, sorry. And so we're like an early stage company. We're trying to convince people from very secure, very safe jobs to join us. So you hold a certain responsibility to them. So I'm wondering if you can share a situation where you may have failed an employee, or how you handled, how that happened, how you handled it.
I'm doing it right now.
So how do you think about that in a general sense?
Well, failing an employee is not the problem. You must be okay with the idea that you're going to fail too, because if you don't have the emotional process to make room for the fact that you can fail, and how you can learn, and how the other side of it is actually growth, and how you take inventory of what you learned and how you move forward with it, you won't be able to extend the same amount of compassion to people who work for you, right? Or for your company. So it's all start with how you treat yourself, how you hold yourself accountable, the commitment you have to yourself for growth, for learning, for being okay with the fact that you can fuck up from time to time. And I think what somebody who comes and work for you want to know is not, oh, this guy will never fuck up. No, don't go work to anyone who says that. But, if I fuck up, he's going to be there for me. He's going to be there. And if you fuck up, it's okay. You're going to be communicating to the team how you fucked up, what did you do, how you're going to make it better, and it's not going to be the end of the world, because it's not.
So like blameless culture, basically.
It's a very slow culture if nobody's allowed to fuck up. Okay. Basically, I don't know they probably all sit in some office in Switzerland.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You talk about insights really like that. So how do you know that it's real insight, not a wishful thinking that your product will be the great market fit?
How do I know?
It's not a wishful thinking that your product will be the great. So how do you trust that your insight is real?
Well, it starts with you. Does it make you feel like, it would be cool? Like, is it cool? Are you excited about it? No, for real, though,
very.
like that. No, great. So the thing I think where people get it wrong is not, well, some people get way too far on like ideas. They live in the future, and we can't control the future, so we don't deal with that. But like, let's say you 100% like you see it, it's exciting, it's for you, right? Most of the mistakes that are happening is how you get other people to feel what you feel, not what you feel is wrong, you know? Like, and by the way, what makes you excited about it to the fact that it makes you take this amount of risk should be the one that gives back the asymmetrical returns, assuming execution, right? There is nobody else's point of view that is not yours can do that. You might see things along the way that will influence it and inform it and will, hydrate, and you say like, oh, this is a good nuance, I should get that. That's exciting. Now it becomes more exciting. But it always needs to be you that is truly excited, because there's going to be so many external distractions and things that are happening that if you're not steady on what you think is your taste, like it's going to be miserable. And you're not going to be able to hold the steering wheel, Got it. No.
Hi. I wanted to ask you if you could expand on your advice about hiring senior employees, because that seems to me something you can do when once you have the capital. When you're in a bootstrapping phase, to me it seems more like something
Totally. Hire them here.
So like something more realistic is like hire intelligent junior people who could.
But here, next to you.
Okay.
If you can't afford a senior remote or a senior here, then hire junior, but it needs to be next to you. Because I'll tell you what's not fair. You have a point of view, and they're not next to you to understand your point of view. And they're also junior, so they have a lot of anxieties, a lot of skills that are up. So they're insecure about their ability to perform already, and they're also not next to you to be like aligned with you on this. So you're just like, it's a waste of time, right? And basically not fair for them. So hire junior, but they need to be next to you,
Okay, thanks.
Hey.
Hi. What is the single biggest difference between building your first company versus building your company now? I know that's very open-ended.
No, it's not. It's not. It's my therapist asked me what is the role. I have 3 younger brothers, and she asked me, what do I think is my role? And it took me a minute, but I was like, I think my role is just to normalize shit for them. Just to normalize shit for them. Just like, because I've been through stuff, so I'm like, oh, this is normal, and I think once you normalize things for your team, or like things that, and once you first normalize it to yourself, because you can't really do it to the team before you do it to yourself. The second time, a lot of things are normalized, and because of this, the emotional amplitude of anxiety is actually pretty stable, and because of that, you can spend time on the things that matter, and you can also extend the kind of calmness to the team. So the second time around, you're just kind of like, okay, it's normal, Yeah.
So this is you being extra calm.
This is me being extra calm. Yeah.
Great.
This is me.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hey.
I believe digital town square was an expression used by Elon Musk, maybe even as early as 6 months before he made a move on Twitter. And I think even earlier than that, perhaps a year before he bought his first shares in Twitter, he made a joke on stage at an interview where he said that instead of paying him, or like for in exchange for his time, you'd have to pay him a lot of Dogecoin.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time thinking that, when he then bought Twitter, that's where he was going to go, what you're doing, or what I imagine that Towns is trying to do. So, some sort of decentralized, like social, Web3 social. Have you learned anything out of Elon's take so far and, his relative success so far? Can we hear your perspective on what has happened to X?
I have a lot of respect for Elon for going after really hard problems and being able to enlist very smart people to solve them. I don't know if Twitter is a hard problem or a toy for him, So, I haven't.
Well, I would also say, like, he hasn't actually done any of the things that you might have imagined that he would do with
Do
it.
you know Twitter from within? That place is,
Yeah, it's its own unique puzzle.
hey, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's a special place.
Yeah, if you guys want to talk more about Twitter, talk to Sriram today or another point.
Hey, Ben.
Hey, what's up?
Good. I'm going to take Jason's advice and dive a bit deeper. So you talked a lot about the fun, the meaningful, the rewarding parts of being a CEO, a founder, a leader. I'm curious to kind of get your playbook on challenges, on like serious company-wide challenges. And
Like what?
you tell me the challenge.
Let's give it.
It could be a lot. It could be deciding you're not in the right direction in the product. It could be that the team you hired is not right. It could be that you're going through something personally that impacts the company. A big challenge that impacts
All of them
company-wide.
I can go to all of them in the company.
I want to hear kind of the psychology of dealing with it as a kind of that at the same time you have to lead a company, you have to be that kind of, I'd say, sounding board for a team, the responsibility that you talked about, and tying all of that into that meaningful, that finding the rewarding part, the meaningful part of the job.
It's a great question. So we can do all three examples with the context of hearing that there. So if people have time for this. So, for example, we had people that were few hires that, aced their, how do you call it? Like all the tests, like
Their
interview. Yeah. Like, we do a pretty rigorous one, and it involved 4 different like pair programming with like our engineers and stuff, and they aced it. And then we started realizing, man, I think this person has like 2 jobs or something. Like something is off. Something is not really clicking. And in those moments, and one of them was not performing. For example, there was a moment before we got to a point where we were ready to put all the parts of the system together and start moving towards launch, which was October last year, where all of a sudden, a lot of people that were working on their stuff separately, when it was time to put things together, we realized like, whoop, what the fuck were you doing there, And in those moments, I think, to your question is like, there is nothing wrong with saying, you know what, this is not going to work. But, it's not going to work. There's no reason to spend time if I have a doubt that somebody may or may not have another job, or if I have a doubt if somebody understood the what they were supposed to do or not, because given enough time, somebody who's supposed to be on the team would proactively understand, especially if they're senior, then they would understand that that something is off here. So in that moment, I don't think it's about me. I don't think it's about them. I think it's about actually the rest of the team, because the rest of the team needs to look left and right. And if you have killers on your team, killers want to be next to killers. They do not want to look into the left and say like, why is this person here? Like they're not pulling their weight. And that's the actual risk, because we're all like, no, but it can do this work. And what if we repurpose it for that thing? And maybe it can do this other thing. And then like, somebody who was like an engineer become an office manager. Why? Like out. And this is something that in the beginning I thought, oh, it's not nice, it's not this, it's going to create drama. But actually, people who get shit done want to be around people who get shit done, and they're inspired. So this is about hiring. And it's okay to just say, hey, we didn't do a good hire. How can we improve? We actually got to a conversation like this after the second time. We're like, there is no way to improve it. We're actually doing pretty good on these things. We don't know how we can make the process more aggressive. We just need to check in more frequently after with their commits, with the panel that agreed to hire them, like how are they doing, to see if there's something that we're missing. And maybe it also was a false negative just because we were in a time spot that was more exploratory. So we couldn't kind of pick up people who are not executing. But all this to say is that, it's not a fuck up. It's just a growing organization, and it needs to shed sometime as you're finding, because you're defining your culture. as well, you know. The second thing was the product direction, right? So the product direction, oh my God, we're changing it so much. It like on the way to where we are now, we changed it all and it's not like big swings. It's all within the same motivation. It's all within the same like goal that we're trying to achieve. But it wasn't until October last year that we were still like figuring out like how would we do the business model? Like how is this protocol going to accrue value? And we have to think about like, oh, there's going to be a membership system where, you know, space creator, town owners can charge money for people to join their space, and the protocol will take a fee out of that. And then this is the thing that goes, but like, this is a whole thing that we didn't have at all and thought about it at all coming in the last minute, you know, talking about protocol. There's, you know, it's important. It's important to be okay until it feels great. Until it feels great, to change the product direction until it feels great. Because otherwise, I mean, the product was called like Zion in the beginning. Mm-hmm. It was like called Zion 2 years ago. We called it Zion. And then, I don't know, there was like the naming changing, things are changing. And I think it's important to keep the company open to that because they need to.
How do you do that as a leader? How do you keep the company, everyone?
Because we're not in the business of flowers. You're in the business of creating a planter. You know, that flower dies, another one comes in. It's about the makeup that brings those things to life. So it's not about if it's Zion or if it's towns or if it's river or if it's about what are we trying to build here. And as we're building, to be okay with saying like, okay, this doesn't work, this work, this doesn't work, this work. And it doesn't mean designed by committee or like getting to some compromises are bad, by the way. Nobody wants compromises. Do not do compromises. What you want to do is actually find option C that everybody's excited about, especially in this stage.
Let me propose two thematic themes and things and tell me if you agree. So I'd like to summarize what you're saying. So one is having strong convictions loosely held is important. Like, so when you're going a direction, you want to be 100% believing that that's the right direction. But as you experience new stuff and gain new data, you want to be able to let go of past beliefs and find something different. And then the second thing is that I would say universally employees care. It's like, killers want to work with killers or employees want to win, right? And so if you have a better idea for how to win, you're better off changing direction to go after that than sticking with the old thing to be consistent.
Yeah. We had this talk with this community founder, this community called Rabbit Hole, and the guy is like saying stuff about what they would want us to implement, and he was like, "So how would you feel about it?" I'm like, "Me? I don't have any ego here. If this is what's unblocking you, let's get you unblocked. I don't mind building these features and stuff. Like it's not about me or us. It's about what do we try to get? We try to get these communities on. Okay, how are we going to get it? We're going to make it rewarding for them, and we're going to make sure that there's no blockers on the way. Done.
Cool. All right. Last category was personal. In terms of a challenge you've overcome.
Oh, you asked me.
No, Michelle's not. So employee, product, personal.
Oh, personal. Both. And we are all remote, so take it, I don't know how it happened, but both my co-founder, our CTO got divorced during the time of this company and me. And these are things that every culture is different, but in our culture, we chose to share it with the team. We chose to share it. We chose to say, hey, this is happening. This is what I'm going through. These are the things that I need. These are my boundaries. These are the things you can expect from me. And also, like when Brian said it, so like also, it is your responsibility when you feel uncomfortable to tell me something that you tell to Ben. And the same thing was, vice versa. And that is the example that people carry. And they're like, I can go to the founders and say what I go through or like what I need, and this is something personal that happens, and it's I think it's important to just like state it. This is what's happening. This is how accountability is going to play out. This is the duration, and this is how we're going to check in. You know,
Cool. No, thank you for sharing that.
we cannot end
No,
this
we need-
thing
yeah.
on two divorces.
Exactly.
So please,
right.
Yeah. So,
somebody raise their hand.
J. Paul, do you have an upbeat question to?
Got a slightly less exciting topic, but what's your regulatory strategy on people like running these communities, and then
Regulatory?
yeah, and then just advice for like working with lawyers on the back of that. So
Okay. When you say regulatory working with the community, can you elaborate? What do you
like
mean?
if somebody is running this community and like Gary Gensler wants to call that this guy running a security or running a company or an enterprise, how do you look at that, or how do you, and then how have you worked?
Oh, from the protocol perspective.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then just advice for working with lawyers in general and how to, guide conversations and be thoughtful about that.
Okay, cool. So you, it's a big one.
Sorry.
So, no, fine. One of the things that gave me a lot of joy this year is learning how a US-based entity can create a token that is not a security, because it's kind of like, it requires to have a deep understanding in like a lot of stuff that I don't have. So you need to kind of hire the right people, and you really start to understand that all of those, there is not a coherent way of here's how you do it, but there are things in place that actually make it inherently plausible for the protocol to become decentralized and actually factually true, not owned by a centralized entity. And these are steps that I just give you the abstract. These are steps that essentially are the thing that they're looking at is like, are the internals had in the beginning that had like a lot of centralized influence are going to benefit from this in a way that is asymmetric to the rest, which can be mitigated by exemptions like regulation, Reg S and Reg D, where it's locks and da-da-da-da-da. The other thing is like, who is the controlling entity of the IP and where does it stand and how it actually proves that. So we have a Swiss association, not foundation, by the way, that's too heavy. There's a new thing called association, more doing it. There's also another thing, DUNA, that we're going to do as well for the US.
We're going to have like a whole workshop on all this stuff. So you guys will.
Sorry?
I guess the advice for dealing with lawyers is more of a fitting question. Or how to.
I think. Can you be more specific though? Because like how to deal with lawyers, like
no, not just. I guess like.
Tell me what you're going.
As a founder, how do you make sure that you're framing the questions you're asking in the right way? Or I guess
I find that the best lawyers, you explain to them what you want to achieve, and then you give them boundaries. I guess this is how I manage everything in my life. But like
that's really helpful.
This is you give them boundaries, and you say, look, I want it to be a one-day, turnaround. I don't care about all the boilerplate stuff, and these are the two things that I care. And would you flag if this happens? And always remember that you cannot get advice about how much risk you should take. Like as we were going through our strategy regarding the protocol, I was very explicit. I mean, this is recorded, so I can't. But I was very explicit.
We can edit
with regard into you cannot really find a mutual language with a lawyer. We will do an AI exercise. Hypothetically, you can ask your lawyer. You can, instead of trying to gauge how much risk and when he say risk, what you say risk, is like hypothetically. What are the things that are going to put me closer to jail, right? And what are the things that are absolutely not? And that could be a way for you to understand when they're saying because they will say avoid everything, right? And then again, we're going back to the same office in Switzerland where nothing moves.
Thank you.
All right, I think we have time for one more if there is one.
Mine's not really about advice. I just really like towns. It seems like a really interesting project from everything you've said. I want to know what are the most exciting use cases that you see being built on top of it. Is it more of like a decentralized Discord,
I
Reddit?
see nothing. We're on testnet. We're in testnet. So we've been using it.
What do you want to see?
What are you excited for?
I'm just again for the future thing. Like I have ideas, but the thing that is important to me is that our team has been using it instead of Slack for like 3 months, and just through that, like just having fun on that. Just try to. That's what I'm focused on. Like how our experience is great, and we'll see. You know, in a couple of weeks we're going to start going in front of all of these communities and show them. You know, and we started a little bit already, but like that's where it's going to be exciting.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Thank you all for the great questions. Thank you.
I hope it wasn't too heady.
All right. Thanks.